Hi, this is Effie. You are watching the second video of the day for the Tons participation in World Card Making Day. I'm making another non-traditional holiday card using our Shoe Wardrobe Solid second edition set. For the sentiment, I'm going to use the Dashing Through the Snow sentiment in our holiday lyric set. I'm going to get started with stamping. I'm going to take the front-facing Ugg boots found in the Shoe Wardrobe set. I'm going to place it on my card panel, which I have nestled in my MISTI. So I'm just taking the sentiment also, and I'm placing both stamps on my panel so that I could get the placement right. Once I figure out placement, I'm going to take the sentiment off, and then I'm going to close the cover of my MISTI. Now this is going to ensure that the Uggs are centered on my card panel, which I am stamping in Hero Arts Raspberry Jam. Once I've inked the stamp up, I'm going to close the cover of the MISTI and stamp the panel. After I stamp the Uggs, I'm going to put my MISTI away for now, and then I'm going to prep my card panel for some heat embossing. I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool, and I'm just going to brush this all over the center of the card where I'm going to swipe my Versamark over the panel to create a snowy bank look. Now I did not have a snow pen that's very popular right now, so I had to create my own snow effect. So what I did was I created basically my own stencil with some typing paper. I just ripped the edge of some regular typing paper so that the edge would not be so straight, because snowbanks are usually not so geometric. So I wanted to create a sort of uneven look. Now I'm going to take the edge of my stencil and I'm going to put it over my Ugg boots so that you could only see the tips of the Ugg boots, because this is actually more of a masking technique more than a stenciling technique. But anyway, moving on, I'm going to take my Versamark ink pad and I'm just going to swipe the edge of the masking, and I'm going to kind of go down about an inch or an inch and a half, because I only want this specific area covered with the embossing powder that I'm going to use today. Now I'm going to get ready to do some heat embossing. I'm going to use a regular piece of typing paper that's going to catch all my embossing powder for later. The powder that I'm using today is Vintage Champagne by Wow. This was the first time that I was using this powder, and I really love it. It's a cream colored powder with gold glitter in it, and I absolutely love anything with glitter in it, so this was a must-have for me. Now I just took a small paintbrush and I'm brushing away a little bit of a top layer over the Uggs, because I only want the tips of the Uggs covered by the embossing powder. I want it to look like the Uggs are standing in some snow. I'm also going to brush away any stray embossing powders. I'm also going to kind of just trim the edge of my embossed area. I don't want it to be too large because I am going to stamp a sentiment kind of over this area. I'm going to use my heat tool to apply heat over the embossing powder to melt it. It's going to melt to this beautiful creamy finish with popping gold glitter. When this embossing powder is melted, it really does look like snow. At least it does on my card or my card panel here, because when you take it in context, it's right under the Ugg boots, so it does look like snow, and it just it looks like glittery snow. But sometimes snow banks are glittery when you catch it in the sunlight. I found that my snowbank was just a little uneven, so I took my Versamark pen and I colored in on the uneven spots to make it just a little straighter. I know I said earlier that snowbanks are not naturally so straight edge, but my OCD kicked in just a little bit here, so I had to fix the edge of this. The pen that I just used was just the pen version of the Versamark ink pad, and it does come in handy, so I thought it was a pretty wise investment for me. The scenery portion of my panel is now finished. I'm just going to continue to prep my card panel to stamp the sentiment on here, which I'm going to heat emboss in gold. I'm going to use my MISTI tool to help me position my sentiment and ensure that it is totally centered within my card panel. You can see that my cardstock is just a little warped, but it didn't really affect the stamping of the sentiment. So here you just see me position the sentiment a little bit over the bottom of the snowbank, and it's okay that I'm getting the sentiment over the already embossed area because the sentiment itself is going to be embossed. So I'm really just doing some embossing over embossing. I'm using the Dashing Through the Snow sentiment from our new holiday lyric set, and I'm going to stamp this in Versamark ink and cover it with Ranger Gold Tinsel embossing powder, which is a really beautiful gold powder with some gold glitter in it. It is my all-time favorite embossing powder at this moment. Now I embossed this sentiment over the vintage champagne embossing powder, and it's okay because I'm using two different colors of embossing powders and they contrast very nicely together. Now I'm just going to take my heat tool and apply heat over the sentiment to melt the gold embossing powder. And you can see that it melts very nicely and it shows up against the already embossed background. Here is a close-up view of the card panel so far. I'm happy with the way that it's turning out. I think that the raspberry jam is contrasting nicely with all of the gold in the card. And I love the cream in the vintage champagne embossing powder also because it breaks up the white of the card very nicely. Next, I'm going to trim 1/8 of an inch off on both sides of my stamped panel. Then I created an A2 size side folding card base for my card, and the reason why I trimmed my panel was because I'm going to adhere some gold glitter washi tape on either side of my card base so that when I put the panel down on the base, you're going to see the gold glitter coming out from the sides, and it's just going to create a really beautiful festive look to the entire card. If you don't have washi tape, you can use glitter paper or even other glitter embossing powders that you might have. I find that that works, but for me, I really like using washi tape because it already has the stickiness or the tackiness on it, so I can just kind of set it down and trim it and be done with it. Now I'm just going to adhere my card panel onto the card base. I'm going to apply a lot of adhesive onto the panel because it is a little bit warped from all the heat embossing that I did. Now the card base that I'm using is 110-pound Nina Solar White cardstock. It's heavyweight, and I like to use this when I do a lot of embossing because the card panel is just going to stick over the heavyweight cardstock, and you're not going to be able to see the warping as much when you use a heavier base. I could have finished the card up at this point, but I didn't because I added some gilding. I added some mini gold stars all over the front of the card to make it look like twinkling stars. I used some Ranger Multi-Matte Medium to adhere each individual mini star onto the card panel. I didn't show the actual process of gluing these down because it took me way too long and you would have been sitting here for about 20 minutes. Now here's a finished card. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the blog hop today that the design team has in store for you. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy World Card Making Day. Bye!